how they come together. Okay? But, you know, that's where the two gods had their little competition. It was centered around Lake Chunji. It's a lake in Korea. I can remember when I was under the ITF system, there were 3 kias in Chunji. You kia here, hey, turn, get here, and you got up to this last movement. Here you are, you do it there too, before you go into the earth part of Chunji. How many of y'all remember that? Don't remember?
We're the only ones that are that old, so.
Now, when we say old, we don't mean age-wise. She says, you know, you've been doing it that long. Okay. I'm good there. I can't claim it yet. Chunji means literally the heaven and the earth. This is the way Chang-Hon has it written in his Encyclopedia of Taekwondo and Taekwondo Legacy. Chunji means literally the heaven and the earth. It is in the Orient interpreted as the creation of the world or the beginning of human history. Therefore, it is the initial pattern played by the beginner. This pattern consists of 2 similar parts. One to represent the heaven and the other the earth. It has 19 movements, 2 kias. Now, have you ever seen what Cheung, he said, how many kias in that form? Anybody saw where he says it's 19 movements and 2 kias? Or you just see 19 movements? You won't see that. You won't see the kias in there. I looked. You got one, that means somebody added them. Okay, but I'm gonna do Chunji. Now you're gonna just be seeing me do a form. And I want you to ask me some questions about what I'm doing. So, Chunji, and that's how you want me to do this?
Please.
Okay, I'm gonna do Chunji, and you can see me do it, and I want you to ask some questions. Okay, I'm gonna do it slow. Now some folks say you're supposed to come back to the same position that you ended up in. That's what Jonggi says. How many of y'all got off a little bit, you know, you maybe a step up? This is what goes back to what Master Bird was saying. Your stance is this wide, you might end up over here. Your riding stance is this wide, or this wide. You may end up in a different position. So technique is very important. Let's get some questions on Chunji. Everybody do it just like that, right? No? If you don't do it like that, it's okay.
The consistency of your stances will bring you to the same place.
Absolutely.
So if you did all of your front stances at half the length that he just did, but you did all of them at half the length, you're still going to come back to the same place. So if you're even if you're consistently wrong, you'll come back to the same place as you started the form, approximately. Now, as you move on from here, from Chong-Moo, you will find some places where you actually do end up a step behind or a step in front of where you begin. But they are symmetrical side to side. If you're not on line with it, you probably had some inconsistency in one of the stances out there. And we all know about places where people try to cheat back online, because all of us who sit on the black belt boards, we did it when we were color belts and trying to come back up through the ranks as well. One of the things that we want to talk about, a physiologic difference or a physiologic consideration on doing Chunji, and it applies all the way through. And some of you don't know, my background is I have a master's in exercise physiology, and I'm a master fitness trainer. So the physiology of this really excites me. When you do a chamber, and you have little youngins who want a chamber like here for the low forearm block, and it's because that's just kind of the easy way to do it. But when you bring the hand up here to the opposite ear, you're actually applying a stretch to the muscle, and applying a stretch to the muscle before you execute the technique allows it to be stronger. Just like when you stretch a rubber band, it snaps back stronger than if you just held it out at its regular unstretched length and let it drop. So throughout the techniques, when you see people chambering, you want to see an aggressive chamber, which actually almost allows a little pop as you go into the chamber, which creates a stretch, which allows the technique to snap out stronger. Same reason that we bring the hands back to here for the chamber, as opposed to letting our students chamber with their hands out here when they're getting ready to execute a middle punch.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
One good piece of advice when you're working with your students or working on your forms: repetition, transition. Before they even actually do a form, they're doing a technique. To have them to transition from one form, one technique to the other. If you're doing middle punches, have them do middle punches going up the floor. Have them turn around and do a middle punch. I mean, or whatever. Make sure that they are squared up. Explain to them about squaring up. But give it to them in repetition. If you get a good technical person, they can learn their technique well, you will be very proud of them on doing it for them, because it'll reflect in them. You don't want to have a person doing the opposite technique. They say, fire it up, they do the form. Energize them. The theory behind power. I hear Grandmaster Jonggi talks about this all the time. So I want to talk about two things here, because I know everybody does YouTube, and they're going to go out there and look at their form, and you're going to say, well, why are they doing this? And y'all see those movements, right? It's called sine wave. That was an incorporation by Grandmaster Chang-Hon. Jun-Ri does not use sine wave. However, they do share philosophies on the theory of power. One thing you didn't see that I was doing, or you may not have observed, maybe the black ones did, is how I applied my stance into my technique. Going back to the stance. So the sequence of it is, your body is not tight throughout the whole movement. It's kind of agile. And at the end of it, it's when you make the contact with the opponent, or the end of the technique is where your body tightens up. You flex your muscle and you go back to what you call a involuntary muscles working. Not really, you may have, how many of y'all had those people in class that hold it real tight all the time? See, you don't want to do that, because they're going to be considered stiff. You'll see them doing punches, and it kind of looks like they're guiding their arm. Okay? Again, as I'm going into the technique, proper chamber, and as I'm getting there, you notice how my body is positioning in the hip, that hip motion. That hip motion helps of that snap, and you want that. Now, don't be so hard on your beginners, okay? Don't be so hard on your beginners. You're not gonna have a white belt to come in class and do that. It may be arm techniques at that level. But certainly, depending on how everybody has a different way. Green belts, intermediate stage, they should be understanding that type of motion. Brown belts certainly should be exemplifying that. I mean, you should see their body snapping into positions. They should start to look like that unpolished black belt at that brown belt level. I know we have brown. See purple? Brown, yes. Brown belts and above. And here. So technique is going to be important. Any questions on Chunji, theory of power, techniques, similarities?
I want to ask a question. Oh, she has, okay, I'm sorry.
I noticed that you never actually, for your front stance, you never actually step. It was more of a push your foot.
Okay.
Is that, we step?
I like that question, Ms. McClain. The method and way that I was taught on each technique, they should look as though you're gliding. Because there are certain steps where you step and you stop. Okay? Let's say, for instance, the closer I am to the ground, of course, the more balance I'm going to have. We could agree with that. Because I don't have to fall. Because that's my joke inside. But when I step, I don't want more of it's okay if my foot comes off the ground a little bit and step. But the method I was taught when I was coming up was more of like a gliding step. Kind of like a samurai using the sword, okay? For those of y'all who don't know, I started in Ishin. There may be some influence on my technique that came from that. I had some training in Shotokan Okay? So the method that I apply is more of a gliding type of step, where my feet stay close to the ground, but not very high. Because, you know, how many of y'all had the student that do this right here on their punch? Let me get an example. See this motion? And you hear their feet like this, listen. I know you've seen it before. I know y'all seen it before, right? Because they feel like the stomp gives them power.
Consistency, all right? If you had students who came in and picked that foot up and swung it, and you asked us our opinion, we would suggest that keeping it close to the ground might be better, but if that's what you choose to do, then understand you've chosen to do that in your school, and it's not going to look like the other folks who were doing it with us, okay? So I was gonna ask the question of a red belt. Is that all right?
Yes.
Good, let's see, I'll pick on a Warrior Way red belt. There's two of them here. So somebody tell me, when you do a low forearm block, how wide is it?
Wide, 2 feet wide.
A low forearm block. Not the stance, the block. How wide is the block? How do you tell somebody where to stop the block? Is this correct?
The outside edge of your shoulder.
The outside edge of your shoulder. And how wide are your shoulders? As wide as your feet? Okay. Is that where the body box is? Could you use the body box as a communication tool and say your hand on the low forearm block comes down to the edge of the body box, as opposed to being inside the body box or outside the body box? And again, we're just trying to use that as a way to communicate with people. All right. When you do the middle punch, we didn't talk about strike zones earlier, but it's also in your handout. Where do you strike with the middle punch? And all God's people said solar plexus. Okay, great.
Right.
You're in a Baptist church. I mean, you had to have one of those somewhere. All right. Now, here's a question. Master Anderson, I do things a little bit differently. I tell my students to assume that the person you're punching in the solar plexus is standing in the same stance you are. So therefore, they're punching at where their solar plexus is now. Master Anderson teaches his students to assume that the person they're punching is standing upright. Which one's right? Yes? Yes, okay. And so the first time you came to see one of my tests, rank tests, you said, oh, they're punching too low, because you wrote yourself a note. You wouldn't say that to me. I had to go find his notes, all right?
He told me to make notes.
I did. And so he wrote that, punching too low. And I said, well, watch this. And I asked the student to explain it. Oh, I'm assuming that my opponent is standing at the same level that I am. Therefore, I'm punching at what my solar plexus level is. And as long as the student understands that, okay, now look, if you were actually going to throw a middle punch and hit somebody, and they were that tall, and their solar plexus was up here, you're not going to punch down here, are
You're a
you?
high punch then.
Okay, it's a high punch to you, but in terms of impact, it's a middle punch on them. All right. And so if I asked, let me pick on my other red belt. If I ask you to punch Mr. Roberts, y'all stand up. Okay. If I ask Ms. Hyde to give Mr. Roberts a middle punch, it's about a high punch for her. Thank you, ma'am. Okay? So it's in relation to the target. We're not saying right or wrong. Generally speaking, when you're doing your techniques, last page of your handout has some indications. When you're doing a low punch, you're looking at the groin, specifically in the groin. When you're looking at a middle punch, you're looking at the solar plexus. When you're looking at a high punch, you're looking specifically right here. But what if, and as most of you remember, you get into high section techniques, especially as you start preparing for your black belt. I'm blocking a high section technique. Well, does that mean everyone is going to come right here? No. Truly a high section, and the way we've defined it, high section is from collarbones up. And middle section is basically from belly button to collarbones. And low section is anything below that. Again, for the continuity of being able to communicate with each other back and forth. Now, y'all are thinking, they have spent this much time and we ain't got to Dangun yet. All right? I know what you're thinking. The deal is we're setting all the foundation right here, because most of the rest of it, the concepts that we're teaching, the stretch of the muscles, the establishment of the stances, that applies to everything. Once we move past that, the rest of the forms do pretty good. Okay? Are y'all tired of this now, ready to move on to another form?
I want to add one more thing though. I really don't care if they're tired, but
Oh, okay.
because we're talking about the first 9 forms, there's no time to be tired. So the transition from one stance to the other is important. Let me ask this question. Would you want to fight somebody with not looking at them? Okay. Would you want your foot to be over at the battle before you get there to sit down? Okay, now I know you wonder why am I say that. Let me give you an example of some things I've seen. Have you asked students to do this right here? Have y'all seen that? All right.
Some of them have done that.
I used to do it too. Okay, let me say it like that. I used to do it too. Because I wanted to make sure I had my foot planted and I felt like this whip would give me power. Not so true. This is why you look at techniques before you go into it. So, you transitioning, like I say in pattern Dangun. I'm at this last high punch here after the first low form block. Okay, when I get ready to go from here to here, you had students do this here before. See how I'm twisted? Watch this. Right? Well, the sequence by this is how your body flows into the technique. Let's say, if I gotta go around that way. I gotta start pivoting. My feet, my shoulders, and then I step. See, I'm ready for the technique now. So if I'm doing my high punch here, and I gotta go to a twin form block over there. So as I'm going, you notice how in transition of my pivoting, I prepare for the technique. That's very important. You can have students who just want to get to the end of the form. Oh, Master Answer, I know Dangun, look. You know, y'all had it before, right? They just want to show you that they can get to the end of the form. Look at the technique. That's how you're going to develop a good martial art. Look at their technique. Look at how they do it, too. After they've gotten good on the technique, see what kind of spirit they have. See what kind of spirit they have in front of you and just do it on their own. Have you had students that get in front of you, they ready to go? Ah! They do it on their own. They don't exemplify the same type of attitude, do they? Same type of spirit. They go to a tournament game. Backflip. Okay. So that's a part of the form as well. So after saying that, we'll move on to Dangun.
By the way, we'd like to see you do the backflip if you don't mind, right?
I need about 30 minutes to an hour to warm up.
Okay. Are you okay doing these?
I got you. Okay, Dangun. I'm going to do the form. I'm going to do it kind of like I did Chunji. And I'm just going to, this time I'm going to look like a puppet. I'm going to just stand here. But what I'm saying when I stand here is, if you have any questions. Okay? So I'm going to do Dangun. Pop quiz. Interpretation of Dangun. Anybody? Just stand up and give it to the crowd. This is how you get it. Oh, there you go. Miss McClain, you're doing too much. Have a seat. Let's get somebody else. You asked a lot of questions. There we go. Now the lady, okay. Lady, go on.
Dangun, the legendary founder of Korea, in the year 2333 BC. 21 movements, 3 kiosks, begins, ends, and Chippy Sai.
Pretty much everybody get that, right? Anybody heard the question, 2333 or the 2334? How many of y'all had that conversation before? I know that we all have, but there was a discussion about that at one time. Dangun, we do it moderate. Was it about the same position? Maybe. Questions?
What's the short story behind the story of
Short story. The short story behind the short story is that there were two gods who were in competition with each other. And it was based upon who could do something the longest. Okay? One god couldn't do it. The other god was able to do it. And as a reward, he was able to become human. That human god gave birth to a son. That's why you get the name legendary founder of Korea. That's the short story behind it. A god, and because that god who turned to a human became a beautiful woman, of course, got married, and had a son. That's Dangun. That's the short story behind it.
So when he did the high punches, what was he hitting?
What was I punching?
Okay, somebody say it out loud. Above the collarbone. That's to be a high section. Okay, but in particular, it was a high punch. Okay, and in your forms, you are hitting particular targets, which we talked about as being right in here in the nose, bridge of the nose area. Okay? Doing a middle punch, he would have struck to the solar plexus, and again, specifically there, not somewhere between the collarbones and the belly button. Right? Trying to make sure we are aligning these. When he does the back stance, each of his knees is over the corresponding foot. So when he was talking earlier about the people who do the horse stance and drop their knees in, there are people who also do the same thing with their back stances. They let that leg sag in, which is actually bad for your knees. So when you're doing the back stance, the knees stay over the corresponding foot. If that foot's pointing that way, that knee points that way, etc. The body is aligned almost completely, shoulder to shoulder, comes through from the back, through the front here, so you should be in line. You should not see people rotating their body to face in the direction that their head is. But we see it. We've done it. Okay, I think everybody here has done it at least once.
Yes.
All right? Just pointing out a few things.
I have to say that I've done these things before. And let me be the first to say I've done them before, because, you know, in martial arts, you're trying to explore what's going on. You know, how many of you have done your own research? You know, you go and read the books. You should. You should be going and defining this. I hear Master Bird talking about it all the time. And I think you actually on one of your exams about the peninsula of Korea. And, you know, you want to go in and do a little research on it. You know, as you grow up into it, because I've seen people hang around martial arts for specific reasons. You just want to kick and punch. People want the exercise. But you're in a school of martial arts, so it's more than just that. You're learning Korean terms, about the Korean history. So get involved with it.
Everybody
So moving
says,
on.
Dangun's great, right? No questions, no comments, no war stories.
Oh, Mr. Robinson has a question.
Oh, yes, sir.
Mr. Robinson, he gave me a sign. He said, 1, 2, 3. What is that? He said. And I'm going this way, but I'm supposed to be turned that way, he said. You know, some students will make this a punch. You know what I'm saying? Right, that's an extension. Execution retraction principle is probably the best thing to put in place here. See, and I've seen some systems that alter this. Okay, so depending on the method of way. So, as I'm low form block, doing my low form block, let's just do a few things. I've done this. Okay, let me try something else. Now, when I've done what you have done in the past, just say so. Did I get you yet? How many of y'all done it like that?
Hopefully everybody. And I've done this one too.
Oh, yes. Okay. At any time that you're doing a technique, you don't understand it, you should ask and encourage your students to, or ask them the question. They don't ask you. You say, what did I just do? strike a conversation. Ask your instructor, what are you doing? That's not only going to make you strong, it's going to make, I got an eyelash, it's going to make your instructor strong as well. But the extension of it is here as I'm preparing. I've seen some systems do this. They low form block, they come right back and block up, okay? But the method or way that we've been taught is to add the extension. So we'll follow that tradition, which is the low form block. Notice how when I'm transitioning here, back hip. The extension and the rising block rises towards the center of the body and up. Not too close. How many of y'all did like that? Never mind. So it's 2 movements. It's not 3 there. Any questions? Man, this is great. Can't wait till y'all get ready to start doing these forms. Then we're going to see what you're really doing then. Okay, shall I move on? Do sign?
If that's all right.
Yeah, this is a great workout.
Okay.
Great workout. Do
Would
sign.
you like me to do something?
I'm going to do this one slow.
I've been sick, so I'm on half speed.
Yes.
I'll do it.
Very slow. You know, hold on. Anybody know CPR?
Thank you.
It's been a while since I've done it.
I got an ER ICU nurse over
We
there.
have
I'm
some.
okay.
We have
All
some.
right. Pardon?
Big keeping purposes.
Thank you. Again, the chamber here for the slight stretch. There, as we talked about all the stances. Cross step. And I always tell my students it's like a railroad track. I'm stepping to this track, stepping back to the other track, pivoting into here, to there. Oh, and this is the one that all of you hated when you learned this one.
Yes.
All right?
Oh, yes.
360-degree turn into a back fist, not a high block, which is often a frequent mistake. Second back fist, begin to form over again. How many of you pick up your foot when you pivot here? How many of you pick up your left foot? How many of you leave it in place? Who picks up their left foot? Who leaves it in place? Who never thought about it? Okay. All right.
Good question.
See, there's because I learned it originally that it was clearly just a pivot, all right, which led me slightly off center. So there is a slight movement of the left foot as you pivot around to get you into the 45-degree angle. Slight movement, probably about that far. Okay, into your block, kick, punch, punch. And you all know the difficulty of trying to teach your students, I'm turning the kick back around this way so we can talk about it, that they recoil the hand that's going to do the first punch while they're recoiling the kick. Then step into punch.
Right.
And we've probably all done it, okay? Because I know I did when I was a beginner. I just point that out. The recoil of the kick and the recoil of the hand at the same time. Pretty close, even though I stopped and walked away a couple of times.
Yeah. Any questions on those signs? 360 turn, 360-degree turn. Want some tips on that? It's just like,
It's not about the turkey.
okay, go on. No, go on. Your question is 4 lines.
Master
about
Bird, I
you.
noticed when you were chambering for your spreading block, yours came a little lower. Now, when we learned how to do the spreading block, we assume that the person has either grabbed our shoulders or our lapels, as if, we're going to reach a double shoulder grab or something like that. So our hands would come up slightly higher. And I was wondering, is that one of the variations between?
And when you have this conversation, you have both of us up here, you always leave us at the point of going, okay, are we gonna play rock, scissors, paper up here to decide what we're going to do?
Method or way.
Right.
That's the answer to the question, method or way.
Again, consistency and know what you're talking about, know what you're doing. Your assumption is that they've done a double lapel grab on you, you're chambering here in order to do that. I think I actually get more power even to do that by coming down here because I get a running start at it. But at the risk of asking a question that we don't like the answer to, if it was a double lapel grab, would you be doing a high block or would you be doing a release?
The spreading block, it would be more of a, oh, wait, they're grabbing here.
If they've grabbed you, you're no longer blocking,
Right,
you're
doing
releasing.
the release.
Releasing.
Okay? So what is the technique called?
Spreading block.
So then you're assuming that, and again, think about how they would have done a spreading block with you. You know, you're coming from here, no chance that they've grabbed you as you pivot that distance, that 135 degrees, okay? Because you're landing here in the spreading block.
So what you're telling me is, depending on the type of execution of what's going on, so whether they're grabbing me or whether I'm doing the attack, basically determines whether or not you're coming from down here or up here. Is that what you're saying?
I personally, two things involved here. I personally bring them from here and bring them up because I get more momentum out of it and I feel like I get a stronger technique that way. That is, I will say that's probably a part of my signature, all right? That I just picked it up and that's what I did and that's what I teach, all right? In time, it's very obvious. You can go to tournament now, you can say, oh, that's one of his students, that's one of his students. I can tell by the way they do it,
That's right.
okay? That's one of the things that my students tend to pick up is that hand drop a little lower and they come up. So the first thing is I chamber down here because I think it personally gives me more power. I'm not saying it's right, I'm saying it works for me. You'll also find that I just chamber with the other hand on top because I'm left-handed. All right, and I can't tell you how many times I got in trouble on a rank test because I was chambering with the wrong hand on top. So, but I'm left-handed. I'm
That's a
the
good dialogue for technique.
Okay,
No,
but
we gotta get to one.
but that's the way that because I do the technique better if I'm protecting my left hand. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there are many times that you can execute something, and whether it's a block or a release or a block or a strike, depends on what the opponent is doing. So if I've got a double lapel grab, I'm doing a release from double lapel grab. If the opponent is reaching toward me and I step in and block them before they establish a hold on me, then I'm actually doing a block and I'm not doing a release. When you learn an outer forearm block, okay, you step out, and there's arguments on whether that's an outer forearm block or an inward forearm block, and we don't need to get in that argument unless you want to. We can have that conversation. But, you know, this way I'm blocking, but when we all learned our white belt self-defense and they grabbed us on the shoulder, we did a release from our left shoulder, right shoulder grab because they'd already grabbed us. Same technique, different thing what the opponent is doing to us.
Let me elaborate on something. Oh, go ahead.
Well, so as far as consistency is concerned, how you want to have that? We'll get that.
How your instructor instructs it. That would be the answer to that question. That would be the answer to that question. But to elaborate, could I use a rising block and a strike? Okay. Could I use a low forearm block and a strike? May not be the practical application of it, but where I'm going with that is this right here. The current situation will reflect how that technique will be used. Now, with Chang-Hon and Jonggi, it's used as a block at that particular time, but that block, of course, can be used to release as well if we've already been grabbed. Now, how do you get them off you? We all agree that your hands will spread to block or to release. That's how you handle that. I have seen that technique done like this, with the arms just touch and spread. Okay? I've seen them where they just kind of just do this. How many of y'all seen those variations?
Have you seen the windmill?
Oh yes, I've seen those before as well.
Which one's right? Depends on your instructor, your tradition. All right. Now, which one might be a little more practical? I'm going to say this one might be a little less practical because you drop both your hands and swing them out like this, and it's like, please hit me now. So, you know, something that keeps you in here and covered, whether it's here or here, I think that's a little more practical for us.
Yeah. Having researched and discussed the Jonggi text with Grandmaster Kaparu, Grandmaster Sias, you know, the method or way that we're using come from that lineage, okay? I was with ITF prior to my coming to UTI. So I've seen some change in the system, and like I said, you just have to recalibrate a little bit, and I imagine it's not difficult for us to just do what your instructors say. We're gonna, and while we're doing the research and the discussion of it, you can do the same. But always use your instructor as the foundation of it. You know, you're gonna say, well, how does this go? Like, you know, I asked Grandmaster Copper questions. He's gonna give you an answer, but he'll tell you the way we're telling you now. So this is the way we're gonna do it. So when you hear someone saying that, you're saying, I've seen it done other ways. So that's how you may say, read between the lines. That's what they're saying when they say, this is how we're going to do it. So.
Master Anderson and I also had an agreement that we weren't going to quibble over a few inches.
Right.
But if I chamber here and he chambers here, we weren't going to quibble over those a few inches.
Okay,
As opposed to punch here versus punch there, we weren't going to quibble.
Yes, ma'am. And I know, Mr. Redmond, did we answer your question?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Release of grad field.
Oh, we got to get to that one. You're ahead of us. No, we didn't. That's no sign.
I did this. Haven't got there yet. Sorry. I'll go right.
360 return. I want some questions on that. Again, you don't want to put your foot before the fight. I always use that joke. Here's the joke. Foot before the fight. Shoulder, your head and your shoulders come first. Then you establish your weight. So as you're stepping into a stance, okay, here it is. So I just done my middle split finger strike. I'm going to do it without the technique. And I'm going to show you how I'm pivoting. Notice how I'm pivoting when I get here. Watch this motion. See how I'm centering my weight? So when you get ready to move, think about trying to move like this. Now, your weight is outside too wide. So you got to center your weight to get your movements to be clear. So if I'm here, I'm doing my middle split finger strike, and I'm going to show you the hand move. I think some people have a question on what my hand does. Maybe that, right? But here I'm pivoting. Now when I'm getting here, I'm pushing into it, and I'm centering my weight as I step into it. So you can practice that. So as I'm pivoting into it, this hand does turn over like this. Now, this is Cheung. Your hand turns over. You'll see him do this. Notice my foot came around with my weight to the technique, as opposed to, see the difference? Easier said than done. Understand it first and then apply what you've learned, it'll come. Any questions?
It's one of the ways we've learned to do the technique in the past, and just want to make sure that we're consistent with that, is almost put one of your legs behind the other knee, like a skater would, to create that centrifugal force. So are we just kind of sliding our foot out there? Can you show that to us one more time?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Make sure I'm understanding. Are you saying that I do this right here?
Well, almost.
Because I've seen my students do that. I was wondering.
Right. Almost like this, where you would.
Okay, kick it behind.
Right. And then
Okay.
out like that.
I'm going to have to go back with method or way on that one. This is a step. You understand? This is a step. So I tell my students to, when you're stepping, you do a glide step. Your feet remain close to the ground, because you have techniques where you come. Here's one. Watch this. Okay. Now, let's say for instance I apply that there. Let's say for instance I apply that. That means they're on one foot. Okay? Method or way. As I'm pivoting into the technique, here's where I'm going to see it, wait, and tack. Now I had to answer your question. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I think that we were taught that you went from your middle spear finger, and then this was actually a release from grab fist, and then you pivoted. And so is that not, I mean, at least that's what my understanding was. We might not have actually been taught that.
And I know what you were supposed to have been taught, okay? And I did teach you to think about it that way.
Yes, sir.
All right, because I'm trying to get people to snap their hand over. So I'll take the hit for teaching it that way.
So it is not
was that what you were talking about earlier? Okay. So if you look in the June retext, if you look in the Chang-Hon text, do they call that a release from grab fist? No. It is. It's actually a reversal of the technique to break free.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. But because I just couldn't get y'all to do this, okay, you snap your hand over. I told you to think about grabbing the guy and pulling the neck.
Let me tell you something. I tell my students, especially my little ones, you know, I say, listen, I want you to do this like you're doing this. You know how you use an analogy? That has transformed when they become adults. I say, do you remember when you were young? Like this young man, stand out, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson started when he was 5 years old. Now he had a big journey away from the class, but he came back. How old are you now? 20 years old. So when he was 5 in my class, I said, Mr. Wilson, I want you to do this technique just like you're gonna get on a horse. You know, and you saddle up. And when he was old, I said, Mr. Wilson, I told you that because when you were a kid, I had to use a certain type of language with you to get you to perform the way I needed to see it done. So things will evolve. So you may hear those things.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on those sides? What time? It's check time. 3?
How about 3:17?
Yeah, 3:18.
Okay.
That clock right there is right.
Okay, good. Okay. Shall we move on? Technique is very important. How you get into it? Won-Hyo. I need the interpretation of Won-Hyo. Not everybody at one time. You can look at this as a what you call it, a pre-rank exam. I'm getting ready for my next rank.
Stand up, speak the truth.
Won-Hyo.
Won-Hyo, named after the monk who introduced Buddhism to the Silla dynasty in 686 AD. 28 movements, 3 PI, starting position, Chunji, Sagi,
That is correct. Don't lay their hand. That's fantastic. Praise is good. Challenge. Okay, Won-Hyo. Anybody gonna ask me any questions about my Chippy Sai? I know you've seen people do this. Knees are bent, but not noticeably bent. So my knees are not just directly straight like that. They're noticeably, not noticeably bent. Okay? I'm gonna do this one slow. I think I've been going too fast. They've been afraid to tell me. I'm gonna tell Master Anderson to slow down. Slow down. Hyeong!
May I stop you as you go?
Yes.
All right. Because I'm going to ask a question. What was the second technique you did?
Come on now, quickly. What is it? High knife and with strike.
Okay. And how was his wrist position?
Upward.
It was straight, right? As opposed to bent. And many of you, like my students, learned it bent. Okay? And going back to the text, it is considered to be a straight wrist technique. That's why we're having this calibration.
Yep.
It is a straight wrist technique.
Absolutely.
We didn't talk about the fixed stance earlier. How wide is the fixed stance?
Same as a horse stance.
Same as the horse stance, and the feet are they on line with are the heels on line with each other? Now, people who go under their breath do not get credit for that answer. Kind of like the back stance, where you offset the heels a little bit.
X and Y axis. Now, I don't explain this to my adults like this. X and Y axis. You had geometry. Heel at 0. Technically, I can put this directly on that X axis, right? X come down, Y goes across. Okay? Now, if I move, you see students do this right here. If I bring my foot too far this way, they're moving it negatively. They're going to lose balance here. So it's better to have a more positive stance to gain more balance as opposed to their foot being off in that motion. I know you've seen students do that before. Just keep that in mind, especially for your adults. Start putting that philosophy and science behind it. Martial arts. Martial, what was that, Mr. Robinson? Combat. Art, the beauty of it, the science. So here we are. I hope I don't have to start over. Here, I extend. Some of y'all may have seen students do it right here. Right?
Yes, sir.
It's not going backwards. You're going right. It's just a slight slide into the technique where you shift from back stance to fixed stance. So from here, I'm sliding from a back stance to a fixed stance into my middle side punch here. So as I step 2, my knees are bent. Same technique here, same thing here. Okay? Sidekick ready stance. Here comes some problems. Teaching kids how to do a sidekick can be kind of interesting. Okay. I'll just do what y'all actually let. Now I prepared for my technique after I did my sidekick. I'm just gonna keep going. Just ask me questions at the end. Are you all? Breathing. We're gonna have some questions about this. Okay, come on, questions. Circle the block, I'm hearing it.
This one?
Circle the block that way, yes. Okay, I'll do this slow. .45 from the front. That was the question.
But we're much more.
Circular with it, method or way, nothing wrong with it. With this, I teach my youngsters, give me a 64 Chevy steering wheel. Y'all know what a 64 is? You know it's a huge one, okay? And you know when you turn it, okay? So yeah, I use that analogy. Look at that. Yes, and it does emphasize the power right there as well. Okay? Short circle is good too. That's what I use, a short circle. Short circle. Big circle, okay, good. Work those shoulders on it. With both sides. Questions?
What's the movement that happens between the 4th middle side punch and the 1st circular block?
Chamber for the circle block?
Say it again?
Is it chamber for the circle block?
It is. But how many people make that a move?
How many of y'all make that a movement? Because it's not a movement.
Transition.
It's a transition.
We call it the crucifix, but I mean, that is not a movement. So many people try to make that a move by itself.
And that's going to become interesting too. How many of y'all started counting the movements in the form? How many of y'all counted Hwa-Rang? We'll come, we'll get into it. Did I answer any questions on Won-Hyo?
Is there a specific chamber for your middle spear finger? I've seen them out here, I've seen them here, I've seen them like this, that.
Beautiful question, I like that. And that's based on method or weight, but I would apply this. Upside down chamber is definitely not one I would teach. Let me say it like that. Definitely not upside down. Palms up, close to the body, preferably. I don't teach techniques that I can think of that come wide from the body back to the center. Take everything off of the body itself. So palms up, right into the center. Of course, this is more of a spear than a chop. You'll have some students that do this. Okay? And you have to make that hand travel in a straight line. Hand straightens up, and it's right where a middle punch would be at the end, because it's in the center. Some people think it's over to the side. It's in the center.
And the only thing I would add to that is...
And yeah, supporting elbow, yes. Some people say, oh, where should I put my elbow?
Well, where should we put the elbow? Because some people do this.
Yes, some people have their arm hanging way out. This is the method or way that I've been taught. And I find this consistent with Cheung-Ji. Between the first and second joint, some people go on top of the joint, I go in between the joint. So my elbow is sitting in between that first and second joint. Okay? You don't want the hand to be out there like that. Any questions? Man, we're getting somewhere. So 2 hands, come on.
Movement number 3, when you go for your middle side punch?
Yes.
It's not a step drag?
No, that's a good question. And I'm going to use Hwa-Rang as a reference. In Hwa-Rang, that movement is called a shuffle step, what you say. Okay? This is only a sliding kind of step. It's not something. That motion is that. So in other words, you're not going to say, your back foot is not gonna slide off of that movement. That's what you're asking.
You were taught it, that it was. I was taught that it was, because I taught you. And then later on, that was one of the things they said, oh no, that's not consistent. Go back and check June Marie. It is a step, not a shuffle step. Okay? So that's one of the things that we clarify. Okay?
And let me tell you all something. If you all had the fortune of coming up when martial arts was just coming into the United States, your instructor evolved with that change. So certain things, their interpretation at the time could change. You know, you don't want to use the term to say, my instructor was teaching me wrong. You got to understand how, you all at the best part of martial arts. Now, you're in the technology age. So Master Bird and the other masters and I, 4th degrees and instructors, you all in the essence of Taekwondo, we have access to the information now. So you're going to have less of the things. But Master Bird go back into martial arts a way back, let me just say it like that. So he may have gotten a portion of it, you know, where, you know, when somebody, they didn't have all of the books at that time. But your instructor he had a motivation to come in, and he saw the benefit that he received from Taekwondo, and he was trying to give it to you all. That was the essence of it. So that should help. Yes, sir.
Enter the Dragon was a new movie when I started.
See, that answers your question. Now, some of y'all probably know what Enter the Dragon is.
73.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? We got your. Did we answer your question? Okay.
Well, this actually goes back to maybe Dangun.
Yes.
Earlier. 9-minute strikes. Recall.
Good question. Okay.
We knew that one was going to come up.
Yes. According to the June-ri and Chae-Hong-hee text, there is no recoil on that movement in
Form specific.
there are some forms there's a recoil.
Okay.
And we'll hit them. Okay.
All right. I'm ready to move on. Are we okay? You okay?
Okay. If you want me to, just know how slow it's going to be. Let's see. Master Anderson's been having somebody give us the definition.
Yeah.
Interpretation. Now, we had a brown belt from my school who did the last one.
I'll just make a nomination. How about that?
You go ahead and nominate.
Let's just call someone out on this.
Sure.
I'm seeing that gentleman right there. Give me that name again.
David.
Yes. He looks like he's getting his PhD today. Yul-Gok, the interpretation. And remember, this is not a right or wrong day. Of course, you got brown belt on, but we'll help you. We will help
You need a
you.
lifeline?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not yet. Yul-Gok is known as the Confucius of Korea. 38 movements represent the 38-degree latitude of his birthplace. The diagram of his pattern represents scholar. 38 movements, 3 key as starting position, Chippy Sai.
That's absolutely right. Give that gentleman a hand. I can see red better in his future.
Far in his future. I already know one question is coming.
Oh, yes. We talked about it.
How wide is my hooking block going?
Body box.
Body box, right outside the edge of the body box. And I'm trying to over-accent this chamber when I'm getting that stretch. And here it is, the one you all love, that you all keep trying to get back online here, right?
Floodgates. Here we go. Not everybody at one time. Oh, well, we can move on to the next one.
How far should you jump with the back fist strike?
Master
Hard.
Anderson would say, method or way. Most people will tell you, as far as you need to be able to get back online. Truth of the matter is, it's not a dynamic, dramatic leap. You generally, usually, normally, at the black belt level, I see them doing something like just a relatively short foot. Okay?
I wouldn't use the word jump. I would use the word stomp.
Is it a stomp then? Stomp?
You know how you do this? This is what you're doing with that. Hi-yah! That is a stamping motion right there, and that foot just draws into place. So in your reverse punch here, you're saying this. Hi-yah! On the technique. Method or way though? Any other questions? We didn't get any questions. Come on.
The actual execution of the high knife hand hook and block, I've seen it come straight across. I've seen it actually hook. So because it's called a high knife hand hooking, is it actually a hooking motion? Or does it just come straight across?
It's actually a hooking motion. Your arm does, the tip of your hand does do that. In other words, I think it's not more like what you're saying like this, like high block.
Right.
Yes, it is going to be a hooking motion in there.
I mean hooking like
Yes, but
actual.
yes, but I think what we're saying, I think you're saying it's going over your head, maybe?
Right.
No.
Coming back down.
Right, not over your head, right.
I hope you saw mine did hook, as opposed to a straight
Yeah.
across. Did you think mine went straight across? I'm just asking.
I think I was thinking about the question I was going to ask when I saw you do it.
All right.
He probably saw your apparition, but he was thinking of the question.
My intent is that there is a hook and, of course, that little wrist snap on the end of it to accent the technique. If I didn't do that, I'll have to go back and practice some more.
What is that slow motion technique called? I heard two terms, and I heard both right terms. Say again? No, I'm talking about the slow tensioning motion. What is that called? I heard both answers correctly. I heard one in Okinawan and I heard one in Korean. Brown belts, I know you all want to know these questions. I heard Sun Chin and I heard Dangun. Both of those current terms are correct. That you hear that D sound, it's spelled with a T now. You know that it gets, the T gets that D kind of feel. Like when you say Dangun, it's spelled with a T. Ask these questions. Dosan, spelled with a T, but it gives like a hard D sound. I'm not Korean, but I try to emulate the terms. Chunji as opposed to Chirugi. I work with Koreans. They do transcribing names for them. That's why those belts were transcribed by a Korean. Shall we move on? Any other questions? Because we got a fantastic crowd. I can't wait for them to get up and we get to look at them. Good. Okay, we move on to Chungun. How many movements in Chungun?
32.
And is named after?
Strong Chung-Gun.
He played the leading part in the
Assassination of first Japanese overlord of Korea.
I heard assassination of Korea, which was right. I heard somebody say the leading role in the Korea-Japan merger. I heard somebody say that. That's probably a higher rank. It's probably a higher rank say that.
Well, and it wasn't Chung-Gun that did that. It was the man he executed that did that.
Okay.
Right?
Known as the man who played the leading part in the Korea-Japan merger. Yeah. Talking about Chun-Gun. But we'll come back to that.
It's in their history.
Begins and ends in what position?
Chippy Sai B.
Is this Chippy Sai B?
No, sir.
What's wrong with it?
Too high.
Too high. About navel. Okay, I'm going to move on. If you want to stop me between this form, do so. I know you probably will. Hi-yah! See you, Miss McLean. Okay. Question?
This is not pressing all the way,
Yes.
pressing halfway and it picks up feet?
That's a good question. Do I snap at the end? Yes. So in other words, if I'm doing pressing block, do I just let it flow all the way through slow is what you're asking me. I always tell my students at the end of the Sun-Shin or Dangun movement, execute a snap at the end. So here it is like, yoke up. That type of motion. Method away. Questions?
We go from transients up this way.
Upright guarding stance
Yes,
to
sir.
chambering for the pole block.
But I noticed that you kind of just. So
Went right
we're gonna
into
make
it.
that conscious.
I did that because I knew that question. You would ask me that question. And I thought about this question while I was doing that form. Okay? So the answer is, the tradition that we've learned is to prepare for the block. When I train an intermediate student, I tell them to make that technique more fluid. Now I say that if I'm clapping it out, I'm giving someone an opportunity to prepare for it. But just like a middle punch, as a white belt, you would tell them to say, now you need to extend his hand, you need to chamber this one. But my intermediate students know that if you're doing a middle punch, it's just done like this. Right into it. It needs to be more fluid, the higher the rank. So this is why I did not just stop and then go. I just went upright guarding stance and did the block. But that was a good question that you observed that. That's excellent.
Seems like we're very careful on what we do when we perform them and what we do when we teach them.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're going to have to.
That's a good dialogue. Because you have to be careful because of how the first impression the student gets, you definitely want to be careful how you give it to them. But over, transition over the years, you say, okay, we made you stop from here. But understand, this is not a movement. This is just a preparation. An intermediate movement, just like after when you're pulling this foot back to go into the next technique. So you have to do it, but it's really not seen or just kind of overemphasize. That's probably the best way to put it. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
The middle double overturn punch,
Middle double turn, yes.
I guess.
I'll answer your question if you give me the Korean term for it. Never mind, go on, never mind. Follow this. Never mind. Forget about it.
Chunji. Double, do,
Chibo, true.
There you go. Okay, I can answer your question. See, you got to pay money. You pay money by answering questions. Go right ahead.
Well, I know we do more of a
Circular motion
circular
and upward motion.
Could you
Okay.
show what you did again?
I will show you, but let me explain first. The lecture comes first. That's your what?
Middle punch. Overturn.
Overturn punch. I'm going to do that again. Watch this. Now watch this.
So it's not like an uppercut. That was to the gut. I mean, that's what I always kind of envisioned it as. Coming up and,
Okay.
I didn't say it was.
Well, okay, no. You have a good question. I'm going to go to Hwa-Rang. Now I'm going to do another technique. I'm doing what you call, this is our research and analysis. You go back and watch this. It's a punch, right? Now, this is a punch. Okay? Now, can the punch go up? Of course it can. It's almost a natural movement. So method or way. The method or way that Twin Dragon uses, which you find consistent, is the punch is still a punch, it just turns over. So it's going to follow the same principle, except the arm will be slightly bent. Okay, so still a punch. So you don't want your punch, I wouldn't want my punch to go up like this. See, my punch is to go directly into the body as opposed to up. But can I use it up? Of course I could. But it'd be more like an upward Upward punch, uppercut. Uppercut is a punch.
And is it right or wrong?
It's the method of way. Like so. That's the punch. Any other questions? Palm heel upward block. I see Mr. Robinson, he asked for Sine. He said, palm heel upward block, palm heel upward block. You notice how my fingers are lower than my palm heel. You don't want your fingertips to be hiding your palm heel because you're no longer using your palm heel. Right. So this is a conformative movement which is going to flex your forearm here. You see how my forearm is flexed? That's what that's used for. And I'm using the palm, the heel of my palm in a scooping fashion, close to my body, not too wide, close to my body, scooping up the block, and I'm in a rear foot stance. Uh-oh, how far are your feet back now? What's the weight distribution? I'm just asking my own question. Let me be quiet. Palm heel upward block. So I'm using, there's an extension for it. So after I kick, there is an extension there. And that hand draws back as I scoop up. Did I answer that question with demonstration? I got you.
So where is the foot on the cat stance?
Where your heel would be on the back.
Where your heel would be on the back stance. So if you came from a back stance to a cat stance, you would just draw the foot back, the forefoot back to where the heel was. Is that what you think?
Yes, sir.
That's what he thinks. Would you live with that?
I could work with that method of way. How old are you?
15.
As long as you have the majority of your weight on your back leg, you're normally going to be good because there's no way you're going to be able to put the majority of your weight on your back leg if your leg is too long. So the answer is, as long as the majority of your weight, I've heard 80-20, that's the principle we follow, but I heard 90-10 in other systems, where some of them come up to the tip of the toe. If you've seen some different issue of ruler shoulder gun styles, but we don't come to the tip of the toe. Any questions? Man, this is a great crowd. What's the next form? What's the next form? That's the one you're gonna give us interpretation.
If I planned this right, you'd be doing this for him. Nobody likes to do Toi-Gye.
Toi-Gye.
Toi-Gye was an authority on Neo-Confucianism. The 37 movements represents the 37 degrees latitude of his birthplace. The diagram represents scholar.
I know you listen to my tongue. I'm already reading.
37 movements, 3 kiosks against the Chippy Sai Interpretation.
Absolutely. Give that gentleman a hand. Hey, the higher the rank, still get praise.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you
We
for that.
have those days.
When I did
I
that.
do have a question.
Oh, good. Okay.
Before the form even got started.
Before, this goes back to Chunji. Is this a back stance or a fixed stance?
It's a back
Like a
stance.
snap, because it was actually done like a fixed stance. Because I noticed that you shifted way back to do your front kick.
Ooh, let me answer this.
Well, okay.
Let me answer this. Actually, the back stance. Now, when I train taller students, I tell them, it looks like you're still standing up. If your stance, Master Bird was talking about the different sides. You know, I'm right at 6 foot, maybe a little over. So if I'm doing like this, it looks like I'm still kind of standing up. So a lot of my tall students, I tell them to go ahead and make it a little bit longer, but get down. Now here's how you can tell the difference between a back stance and a fixed stance. I can see all of my foot, front of it. Now if I run a fixed stance, I can no longer see my foot if I'm doing a fixed stance. So if I'm sitting in the middle as well. But now if I look down at my knee in the front, I can't see my toes. But you saw how my weight shifted back? Even though my legs are wider, I'm still in the back stance. 70% has been pushed back on that hip right there.
And that had to do with the belt, the line, the line from his nose to his belt to the floor is shifted back.
Right.
Master Anderson does have a long back stance. But we talked about, when we started, here's a general guide.
Right.
Variances of height, weight, leg length, okay?
You know,
But
25 years ago, when you were teaching me as a white belt and back stance, I could pick my front foot up without having to shift my weight back.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's a good method. That definitely teaches you good leg control and good strength on that back leg. So that definitely follows that principle. But your question was good. Good question. it was because my stance was longer. My stance was longer, and you couldn't hardly distinguish between where my weight was on my stance. It could be the uniform, you know. Maybe it looks like I'm about 10 pounds larger. Maybe it doesn't. Does it? I mean, I know you all seen me, so it doesn't make me look a little bit larger. Okay.
I used to say, do you think it's a uniform makes me look fat? Until somebody said, no, it ain't a uniform.
Oh, that's what it is.
All right. Are you satisfied with your last question? Okay. How wide?
We'll get some questions here.
Body box.
We'll get some questions here, I know that.
Is this smooth?
No, sir.
Okay, just checking. Question?
Can't really see from this angle. Is that actually reinforced?
Yes.
Because I've noticed some.
Reinforced block?
It is.
That's correct, it
In
is
the text.
reinforced, yes ma'am, good
Well,
question.
I've noticed a lot of people do it with a space. So how's that reinforced if it's not?
It's not, there is no space, because if it's the space, it's not reinforced. So your question was good, it has to be touching.
One of the big issues I see people here is they don't establish their back stance and then step to a strong front stance on the transition. They kind of land halfway in between and try to just pivot their feet.
I hear that snapping.
The high-low combination, like you do that again?
It was not a high-low combination block.
Okay.
It was a high back fist, low forearm block.
Okay.
Just because I want everybody to know where we're talking about. Start here, is that okay? I'm chambering for the low forearm block here. Normally I would chamber for the back fist this way, but for the execution retraction, the equal and opposite pull, I chamber here, bring it back fist here, about temple level in there.
Was your question answered?
Yes, sir. I mean, as you get into some of the higher forms, there are a couple of places where you don't know where to chamber. So, I mean, does one hand take precedence over the other all the time?
Good question.
I don't know where to put my hands.
Low forearm block
Where
only
does-
takes precedent. Oh, that's a
Low
good
forearm
question.
block.
Yes. That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's just
Good
more of
question.
a comment, it's not really. And this is kind of the wear method thing. I find your timing of your stance and your technique is perfect. And yours, I don't know, you seem to emphasize more your upper body, your hands. I mean, I guess it seems to me like you place your stances first and then there seems to be more emphasis on your techniques, I guess, your upper body techniques. And I found myself doing that. So I don't know how to, the way to fix that, I guess.
The purpose, the point, the desire is that your technique reaches its point of impact at the same time that your stance is established. So in the case of a middle side block, they come together.
Right.
All right.
Maybe I'm just seeing more of the.
I think he was doing it slower too, right? You know, so
Well, yeah,
sometimes that could make a difference.
And I'm actually trying to overemphasize, so you're seeing hand moves and twists and turns on the end.
I guess I see a lot of that. And
That's a
why-
good observation though.
That's why I see myself doing that, and I
Well,
just need a picture.
if I can still stand, we go here and do this in a little while, and we're doing them at speed, see if you see the same thing.
Yes, sir.
All
Right.
right?
But that's a good observation because timing is very important with technique. Timing, sequence is very important. How you move into that technique is important. Where your weight is at the end of the technique is important. Okay? Any other questions? Did we get them all for that one? Yes, sir.
Okay, when you're doing the jump and an X block,
Ah.
is that a jump or a stop?
You like to do that?
Sure, go ahead.
In the Chang-Hon and the June retext, that's a leap in the air. So you are jumping. So let me answer your question. This is what you will be doing. How many of y'all got the picture of the June retext where you see him in the air?
Way up there.
He's way up in the air, and you can see him. He's in the air like this, kind of like that in the air. Yes. So, you know, on days, you know, you have those days. I'll say, okay, I took a few vitamins today, so you'll say, and block like that, heel up. Yes, ma'am.
Which hand on top?
Okay, I like this question. This is the way you always do it. Body moves in a locomotion. So if I step with my left, my right kicks out. So if my left foot is in front, then you're gonna put your right hand or left hand on top. I might have had right on top. So put like this. If I'm doing an X block, my left foot is forward, put my right hand on top. You see what I mean? You understand? No?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure it's clear.
We were taught, no disclaimers. Whichever arm is your stronger, you're gonna protect more. So generally I'm left-handed, so I put my right arm on top in just about anything that we do.
I'm gonna answer your question based on the master level. There is no such stronger arm. You must reach equilibrium. Your right should be as strong as your left. So, but whatever method or way you were taught, I would follow that. But at that level, you remember your left is not stronger than your right. And your right is not stronger than your left. If it is, practice more. So, the general rule though, the general rule, to make the technique stronger, reverse position using the locomotion, how the body moves. So think about this. Let's take this motion here. If we walk like this, I'm philosophizing. Even though, now what's going on here is no weight is forward. That's why it looks a little off sync. Now to make this synchronized, I let my foot get there. Now that might look a little bit better. But you walk kind of like this, right? Unless somebody walks like this. Okay? So, that's the method I use when I'm using the X block. Whether it be high, middle, or low. Whichever foot is front, I use the opposite of it. Okay? Get the questions answered? Man, it's great.
I'm gonna do Hwa-Rang, because you're gonna.
Please, okay, all right.
Hwa-Rang. Anybody?
We're getting 1,000 questions. Interpretation. And don't, somebody that already stood up, don't stand up. Don't stand up. Somebody else who has not stood up, give us one. Brown belts, I understand why the brown belts are not standing. They may still just be learning Hwa-Rang or interpretation. So I'm not putting too much pressure on brown, but I'm certainly looking at red and black. I act like you reading over there, Mr. Brown. Somebody want to say named after 100 warriors. Somebody saying, oh, named after the Hwa-Rang youth group, which originated in the Sine dynasty about 350 years ago. This group became the eventual driving force. Somebody's thinking both those things, and you're trying to figure out what to really say. Whatever you say is going to be right, as long as you don't say it was named after Cheung or something like that.
Somebody rescue me here. Thank you.
Come on.
Hwa-Rang, name of Dangun, 120 warriors that went to the mountain sea with refined techniques of Taekwondo, then known as Taekwondo. Through 29 movements represents 29th division in which Taekwondo developed to maturity. 29 movements, 3 chaos, start positions, Chunji.
Just out of curiosity, who do you think introduced Taekwondo to the 29th Infantry Division?
You got to know that answer.
Say it out loud. You said it. Somebody said it.
General
General Che Hong Hee. Okay? All right. By the way, did you know Cheung, he was like Inspector General? Ah, there you go. Find out all kinds of things. All right, here we go. And what is this next technique? No?
No?
It's an inward block, okay? The way you learned it. And it's changed back and forth, all right? So I've had to learn it both ways and unlearn it both ways. And here is our slide step. Is this closed stance? Just making sure we're all consistent. Oh, let me emphasize my lower body a little bit more. Absolutely not.
Go on, Mr. Moore.
The downward knife hand strike. This went down, of course, but.
I didn't move my other hand, did I?
Yes.
Did not.
Yes, sir? No, sir.
I am agreeing, yes, sir, you did not.
That's correct. So was I right or wrong?
We were trying to determine that as well.
I like that.
Is it consistent with what you were trained to do?
No.
It is not consistent with what you were trained to do. I thought about it when I did it, and I said, let's see if anybody asked that question. Okay, so yes. A circular motion to push-pull move, execution, retraction. If you don't know the form yet, don't worry.
Master Sharif.
We need you to talk about this. Do that palm here. Like a palm here.
Did I turn my hand upside down?
No, sir, you kind of did it like a block as opposed to a strike.
That was a deflection.
So that's why I say it's on YouTube.
According to the Chang-Hon text, it's called a palm heel pushing block. Okay? Palm heel pushing block. So it's going to push. I have seen it done multiple ways. I've seen some systems come across their body like a parrot or so. Okay? The method or way that I use is to push the punch, or the block forward motion. Push the block forward.
And you ended at your center line?
Yes.
Okay. And I ended mine at the opposite shoulder.
All right.
Would we call one of them wrong?
Sir?
I said, would we call one of them wrong? No,
It'd probably be wrong from my perception or perspective, because I was thinking one was a strike and the other was a block, but they both block.
They both block.
Whatever it is, it's supposed to be a block. When you
Yes,
put it down.
it is.
It's supposed to strike.
Any other questions? Come on.
The transition from your middle spear finger to your knife hand block, the actual movement, I was taught to move the
Right
front
foot
foot
up.
over and pivot the back foot, but I noticed you moved your front foot over and picked up your back foot and brought it up.
I was originally taught the way you were, and then I was taught to do what I call the cross step, the train step, okay? And in the last 20 years, that's how I've done it, because that's how I was trained, okay? And I think it actually is a discrepancy between Junri and Chang-Hon.
Absolutely.
So one does it one way, one does it the other.
Chang-Hon does this motion. He says, you'll see the foot move in because they use the sine wave. Jewelry just does this. Yes, ma'am.
Could you show me that transition what you're talking about?
Middle spirit finger, you step over. Right.
Just like you did in Dosan, where you cross step one to the other, okay? And again, I originally learned it here and pivot.
I've seen it both ways. Now, you know, there's a lot of things you can disagree on. There's a lot of things you can agree on. But when things are similar, I think we talked about the inch margin, you got to look at method or way. Went to an MKA tournament this weekend. and I saw Samil done a way that I have never seen it before in my life. Okay? Now, let me say this too. Your instructor should make it his business, that's including Master Anderson, to make sure he has the research and gets the nourishment that he needs. Because I know some instructors out there that don't have that, and they just kind of go with the flow. I don't give my students a picture of Chunji when they first come into class because I know they're going to probably develop bad habits. The reason why I say that I'm making that philosophy is that this: if you have an inexperienced instructor who takes a picture and try to learn it, then he's missing a portion of the lecture part that you're getting. So be thorough in your education. Look out, do your research. Ask your instructor questions, okay? Sit down. Go do some research. Can you learn a form off of the internet? My answer is no. Can I mimic one? Yes. I could go out on I did it with Jun-Ri. He was doing one he does with the Star Spangled Banner. Just learn the form, but I don't know everything what he's doing, but I figure at my level, I have enough intelligence about Taekwondo to be able to decipher at least a great portion of what he's doing. Those things might happen. So to put that analogy in perspective, there may be some things that look a little different. Do your research on it. But one thing you will find is that you will never find one answer. It's the only question. You will never find somebody, if it's somebody from their system, they're gonna say, no, this is it. Somebody from their system, I imagine Jun-Ri and Cheung, he had a bunch of, it's a long conversation. But I'm not finished with how wrong. I want to count it. I want you all to count it as I do it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Stay with me.
10.
Is this a move?
No.
Okay.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
What?
What?
Keep going.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
How many moves you say was in Hwa-Rang?
6, 7,
29.
29th Infantry Division.
How many moves?
Oh.
How many of y'all ever counted them out and ran to that problem?
Is the landing down into the right hand block not a move? Is it not a move?
Well, it actually is a move. But let me tell you how Chang-Hon, he counts that. He counts that as movement A. So, where you here, you kick, and you kick here. That's the movement, but this is the movement A. They count as one actually. The roundhouse kick to the knife hand block right there. Count as one movement. Red belt, brown belts, y'all getting a treat. Okay, any more questions? Don't be afraid, you can ask questions. We all on one accord.
It's the last one.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a conversation about this flying kick. I can see it. I'm gonna do it traditional. Chun-Moo. Okay, I'm gonna do it slow. Stop me at any time. Hyeong. Okay. Question? Well, we're ready to go to the next section. Let's go. What's the chamber for the high knife and inward strike and lead leg position? That's a high knife and inward strike and lead leg position. Just like in Won-Hyo, but in lead leg. Yes, sir?
What is this move called?
Double palm heel over block. Did I ask your question, Ms. McLean?
I'm working on it.
That is this, but in lead leg. This is a block, that's a strike.
Again, the stretch of the muscles to allow the snap of the technique, okay?
Yep.
Now, Master Anderson, he tends to accent his right hand a little bit more when he does it, as opposed to he did it more equally. But again, it's tomato, tomato.
Man, that was it. Well, I got a question. Flying kick. Is this right? Or is this right? Who's done it both ways?
Look impressive.
Scoop and kick. So as I step, glide, then kick at the end of it. You get as high as you can before you kick.
Seems like that would get you off, give you some momentum to get you higher off the ground.
It does, and it also pushes you forward. See, jumping, you go up and kick and come back down. This one, you have to take your body forward when you kick. Any questions? Woo, this is great. We're gonna let them stretch out for a moment and get
I
going.
think we all are stretched out. Any questions, comments, more stories?
I'm warm.
All right, restroom break, and we'll reconvene in the gymnasium.